When you're getting data from other sources, sometimes you have issues with date and time type entries. In column A in this list, this data appears to be entered as text. We don't know how it happened necessarily, but it's a problem. And if we were to try and sort, for example, this data here, I'm going to use the AZ or the ZA buttons on the data tab in the ribbon. I'll use AZ here. That certainly doesn't do anything with the data. Does a reverse sort here? Does it help? There's 2014. There's September out of 2011, then a date out of 2010, then a date out of 2011. Our data is all messed up here. So there are a couple of ways around this. If the information looks like a date, and you might have tons of entries, they're probably not mixed up like this, but they might be one or the other. One fix is to use the function called DATEVALUE. We'll use it on this cell, see what happens. Looks like it's displaying a different variation on it. We'll double click to copy this down here. So we make the column wider just to make sure it's right aligned. That's all looking good. It looks like those are real dates, and now we have something to work with. Similarly with times, we might try sorting these or doing other things with them. Occasionally you do get correct answers if you apply math to these. If, for example, if somebody says, well, I know that's text, but I still want to see what would happen if I add 15 minutes to it, equal this plus, and you could put in within double quotes, 0:15, double quote, and you get an answer that initially doesn't look very correct. But if we were to right-click and format this with format cells and use the time category of 13:30 or the 1:30 p.m. that puts in the AM PM, we see we actually do have a correct answer. So sometimes simply applying formulas will make this work. But a better approach here, and one that you don't have to experiment with too much, is likely to be to use the time value function. And I've highlighted both cells here, so as I type this, I'm referring to this cell, but I'll press Control-Enter here, and we'll have answers for both of these that now make sense. But the display here, we probably want to use this kind of a display, so a quick shortcut for copying a formula is to use the right mouse button and drag this cell entry downward. And then after letting go of the right mouse button, we'll copy here as formats only. So those are a couple of different approaches to cleaning up data. And here's another one too. I'm going to move these aside. Now recognize that they do represent entries that we can work with. Now, another approach to cleaning up data like this is simply to apply math to them. I'm going to pick an empty cell here and simply press Control-C. We're copying an empty cell. Then I'm going to select the data here, right-click, and paste special, and simply add. I'm adding 0 to these. And simply by applying math, it's done something that initially looks really weird, but these are date type entries. And a quick keystroke shortcut that you might want to use to make them look like dates, Control-Shift-#. It's the only keystroke shortcut for dates. That confirms that those are accurate. Now, if you didn't know the shortcut, what you would do here is press Control-1 or right-click Format Cells, pick a date format that makes sense to you. Certainly one of the common ones is the first one there. We could use that. And that confirms, too, that we've cleaned up the data. Remember, all we did is we added zeros to these. That, too, is not always foolproof, but sometimes it does work. Now, these don't look like they're accurate, at least at first, but they, too, represent portions of the day, and they can be displayed as time. The one keystroke shortcut you might want to use, the only one that exists for time entries, Control-Shift-@, and we see those entries that way. If you didn't know the shortcut, and let me undo this, right-click, go to Format Cells, and one of the time categories here, and one of the time formats here, either the 24-hour style, 13:30, or the one below it that shows AM, PM. I'll use the first one, and so we see our numbers displayed that way. Meanwhile, these numbers here that are working off the correct data in column A no longer have any purpose, and so we wouldn't use them in that context. But I think you can see when you're getting data, and as I press Control-Z here a few times, we'll be moving backward here. When confronted with data like we see in column A there, we sometimes have to take steps to clean it up. And many times it's the date value or the time value function that's going to help us clean up that data.